Last week, I reviewed Turbo Overkill, a futuristic boomer shooter that was heavily inspired by Blade Runner and Cyberpunk 2077. In it, you play a character named Johnny Turbo, a half-man, half-metal superhero with a chainsaw leg. I loved it, but there was just one thing about it that I couldn't shake, and that is the hero's name. Now, if you're like me, a survivor of the 16-bit console wars, then you know Johnny Turbo not as a futuristic killing machine, but rather as a chubby superhero who was dead set on selling you a TurboDuo. Today we're going to be talking about the history and comic book adventures of Johnny Turbo, an ambitious 3-part advertisement from Turbo Technologies Incorporated that ran in the pages of Electronic Gaming Monthly, GamePro, and Video Games and Computer Entertainment. This is the story of Johnny Turbo, the TurboDuo's superhero spokesman. The year is 1993, and the 16-bit console war is in full swing. While many went into the new generation expecting Nintendo to continue their dominance in the home console market, Sega ended up surprising everybody with a strong ad campaign and an impressive lineup of games. While Nintendo and Sega were locked in a bitter fight for dominance, Turbo Technologies Incorporated, the video game arm of NEC, could see that their TurboGrafx-CD was destined for a third-place finish. So, with both time and market share slipping away from them, TTI decided to do something new. They created a comic book hero. Now, to be fair, that idea wasn't completely unheard of at the time. While not necessarily the norm, it was fairly common to see games and accessories advertised in magazines using comic book panels. This was a strategy that Culture Brain employed when they released Flying Warrior on the Nintendo Entertainment System, and games like Mick and Max Global Gladiators and the Combat Tribes had followed suit in the 16-bit era. Hell, even the good doctor himself decided to sell cartridge cleaning kits using this comic book style. So gamers were more than accustomed to seeing this type of marketing in their favorite magazines. But TTI took this concept one step further by spreading out the story of Johnny Turbo over several different issues. They created a whole universe where the TurboGrafx would use a superhero to spread the word, all while fighting off Sega's evil goons. And that's only scratching the surface of what happens in this 13-page story. Let's go ahead and dive into this 3-month-long advertisement and see what we can glean all these decades later. It all starts with episode 43, the Master Plan, where we learn that FECA, the comic stand-in for Sega, has implemented the dastardly plan to trick the public into thinking that they are the first and only console with CD-ROM technology. This, of course, directly mirrored real life, where the TurboGrafx-CD had hit the market in 1989, a full 2 years before the Sega CD powered up the Genesis. Now, you'd think that this wouldn't exactly be earth-shattering news to a computer expert like Jonathan Brandstetter. After all, he has the new shoot-'em-up Gate of Thunder on the TurboDuo, which really has the arcade feel. But when the radio interrupts their whoop there it is marathon to bring us breaking news about the FECA CD system causing a commotion downtown, well, Jonathan is incensed. They keep saying that their game system is the first and only system of its kind, but it's not, he tells his roommate Tony, who wonders if there's anything they can do to stop FECA. I'm not sure, but we've got to do something to loosen their grip on the minds of the public. Down on the streets we see that Casey Kasem was not wrong. FECA really is selling their CD system to unsuspecting children, even promising them a bounty of free CD games. And to be fair to Sega, that is true. When the Sega CD came out, it not only came with a CD filled with random music videos and an audio CD with trippy CD plus G visuals, but it also came with a copy of Sherlock Holmes, the shoot-'em-up Soul Feast, and a disc filled with Genesis hits like Streets of Rage and Golden Axe. There was actually a lot to see and play right out of the box. Now back to the comic, we see a pair of Agent Smiths bragging about how much money they're earning from selling FECA CD. Ooh, it's a good thing that nobody knows the real truth about us, because if people knew that the TurboDuo was already out with games already available, we'd be in big trouble. And that's when our hero Johnny Turbo shows up. Alright, yeah, he kinda looks like 90s era Kevin Smith, and he comes out of nowhere just waving a gun around a bunch of kids, which isn't great. But he's not wrong to point out that Sherlock Holmes actually came out on the TurboGrafx-CD a full 2 years earlier. I'm bringing out the truth about whose CD system was here first, Johnny yells as he fires his gun around a bunch of children, which, again, is not good. The TurboDuo was available first, and our games are more intense than yours. As our tubby hero fights the fake goons, the crowd begins to slowly realize that the shady-looking agents weren't even human. That's right, a bunch of kids actually handed their hard-earned money over to machines, and Johnny Turbo saved the day. But don't celebrate too soon, because the game is not over yet, and Feka will be back in the exciting next episode.
This TurboDuo is not a toy. It's a sophisticated multimedia video entertainment system that uses the latest CD technology, not rated for little boys. With CD capabilities prepared for an assault of sight and sound. It's upwardly and downwardly compatible with games and graphics that makes others look like mere child's play. Step into the next dimension. Get the new TurboDuo. It's not a toy. Now get 5 free games, including Gate of Thunder, when you buy the new TurboDuo. Sold at stores near you.
And that brings us to Em Dangle, which starts with Feka regrouping and devising a new plan where they intend to trick gamers into thinking that the Feka CD is a standalone system. You know, like the TurboDuo. It's not, of course. The Sega CD actually needed the Genesis in order to work, but as the head of Feka says, kids don't know about that, you fool! They'll buy our CD system and then have to spend another $100 on our 16-bit system. See? It's an airtight plan. Now, back at Jonathan Brandstedter's apartment, we see that he's still obsessed about Gate of Thunder, which comes free with the TurboDuo. Of course, Tony's already heard all of this before, and at this point, he's just basically ignoring Johnny. In fact, he actually interrupts the computer expert with breaking news. The Feka CD system is failing in Japan. Ooh, shots fired. Back to the toy store, we see that Feka has somehow taken the place of the usual employees and has enacted their newest plan. You know, to make gamers think that the Feka CD is the lowest price CD system available. You see, once the kid buys the Feka CD for $300, they sinisterly reveal that you still need to buy a $100 game system to make the blasted thing run. All this ends up making a small boy cry. Thankfully, Jonathan Brandstetter is in the store playing Gate of Thunder, a game that he already owns. As Feka gets rich, he sneaks off to change into his alter ego. And that is when Johnny Turbo and his way too long one-liners comes out swinging. He punches, he kicks, and he smashes heads together, all ranting that I'm tired of you guys trying to fool these kids. The truth is, your CD system doesn't even work without your 16-bit system, so kids have to pay $400 for a complete CD game system, while the TurboDuo is a complete system for only $299. With the kids watching from a distance, Johnny Turbo shouts at the last goon, hoping to never again see the glowing red eyes of the evil corporation. As you can imagine, this does not go over well back at Feka. The big man huffs and puffs, ready to teach Johnny Turbo a lesson. But that, dear viewer, will have to wait until the next episode. The final chapter in our story is called Sleepwalker, and it employs a decidedly different tactic. This episode is all about Johnny Turbo's roommate, Tony, who, I gotta admit, we really don't know that much about. I mean, we see that he's tired because he spent the entire day in the kitchen for some reason, and then, when he heads to bed, we get a glimpse of his book collection, which includes The Joy of Wax, The Feminine Mystique, Good Boy and Bad Girls, Lace and Feather 2, and, of course, American Psycho. Wait, what? Perhaps the most troubling thing about Tony is that he dreams about Johnny Turbo. And you want to know what Johnny Turbo is talking about? That's right, no matter if it's day or night, Johnny won't shut up about Gate of Thunder. Holy microprocessors, just look at those graphics. And the soundtrack really rocks. But here's the big twist. While dreaming, Johnny reveals the newest shoot 'em up for the TurboDuo, Lords of Thunder, and it blows Tony's ever-loving mind. Oh my gosh, this game is so incredible. I've got to tell Jonathan. But hold up, Tony, because there's still more that you need to know. You see, in his dreams, he learns that the pack-in CD that comes with the TurboDuo doesn't just feature 3 games, but it actually has a secret 4th game. If you press up, right, down, left, and the number 2 button, you'll unlock Bomberman. Not just in the dream, by the way, but also in real life. That's a real code. Yeah, here's hoping that Tony is good at remembering his dreams. And with that, he wakes up, shouting Jonathan's name as loud as he possibly can. He stumbles out of his bedroom excited, telling Johnny Turbo about Lords of Thunder and that secret code. But Jonathan doesn't seem surprised. Relax, he says, and tell me about it. But then, as we look at the table, we see that he already owns a copy of Lords of Thunder and has a folder marked Bomberman Codebook. This was his plan all along. It's clear that by spending all day and all night spreading the word of the TurboDuo, Johnny has somehow incepted Tony's dreams. I don't know why, but that kind of feels like it crosses a line. And now that I think about it, I have to admit that Johnny Turbo is kind of a terrible superhero. Let's break it down. He's a computer expert that doesn't seem to have a job. He gets into fist fights over game systems. He shoots a loaded gun around a bunch of children. He won't shut up about Gate of Thunder. And he'll even go as far as to incept your dreams if given the opportunity. Johnny Turbo's not a good guy. And this is not a very good ad campaign. Now, as you can imagine, this didn't do much to move the needle. TTI would end up throwing in the towel 1 year later, discontinuing the system in North America in May of 1994. They were really only able to sell 5.6 million units, a fraction of the 31 million Genesis and Mega Drive consoles that Sega was able to move. Now, 3 decades after the 16-bit console war, the TurboGrafx-16 is looked back on fondly. Millions more gamers were able to discover the system's rich and varied library through emulation, the Virtual Console, and other compilations. Johnny Turbo, on the other hand, has largely been forgotten. Or perhaps he was secretly frozen and then thawed out in the future, where they replaced his body with metal and gave him a chainsaw leg. I mean, stranger things have happened. Alright, thanks for watching me break down this comic book story. Or, I guess, fake comic book story? You know what I mean. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we have a lot of videos looking back at the history of game magazines and advertising. We're big fans of that kind of thing. Now, here's the question I have for you. Was Johnny Turbo an effective spokesperson for the TurboDuo or not? I mean, did this comic make you actually want to buy the console? Let me see your thoughts in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back later this week with a bunch more reviews. While you wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.